was quiet. Too quiet. Hanna had just put the children to bed, kissed them goodnight, and was tidying up the kitchen when she overheard something that would change her life forever. She froze. Andrew's voice was unmistakable, but it wasn't the warm, loving tone she was used to. It was softer, laced with something unfamiliar. And Chica, her maid, the woman she trusted with her children and her home, was responding in that calm, calculating way she always did. It wasn't a conversation anyone should overhear, let alone a wife. "I don't want her to find out," Andrew whispered, his words barely audible. "You don't have to worry about that. You're mine now." Chica's voice was low, almost seductive. Hanna's heart pounded in her chest as she pressed her ear closer to the wall. "We'll make sure she never suspects a thing. The club doesn't fail. Not if you follow the rules." Hanna's breath caught in her throat. "The club?" Before she could move, Andrew's voice grew clearer, more insistent. "I'm tired, Chica. Tired of pretending. It's been years and I'm not the same man I was when I married her. I need something new." And just like that, the truth hit Hanna like a ton of bricks. The man she had spent her life with, the father of her children, had fallen for another woman. And not just any woman, but one who was part of a dangerous and deceitful game. She stumbled back, her knees buckling as she clutched the edge of the counter for support. The secret was out. And her world was crumbling. Hello and welcome to Geniusma African Tales. Your home for thrilling, educative, and emotional African stories that stir the soul and spark the imagination. If you're new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Your support helps this growing community of story lovers shine brighter every day. Now sit back, relax, and let's dive into today's powerful tale. In the dark corners of the city, there was a group of women who had mastered the art of seduction, manipulation, and stealth. They were known only by whispers. Rumors of their silent victories spread among the men who had been deceived. They called themselves the Club, and each of them had one goal: to steal married men from their wives. Chica had always known there was power in silence. She'd been taught from a young age that the world was a game, one she had to learn to play if she wanted to survive. She had watched older women play it, the same women who had mentored her. They were experts at what they did. The art of seduction wasn't just about looks. It was about timing, patience, and understanding the men they went after. Her introduction to the Club came early. She had been a young woman just starting her adult life, when she met one of the first women who would become her mentor. A woman named Ijeoma had taken Chica under her wing and taught her everything there was to know. "Men," Ijeoma had said, her voice firm, "don't like women who are eager. They like women who are mysterious, calm, and most of all reliable. If you want to get close to them, you have to become part of their life, something they can't live without." The first rule of the Club was simple: never let them see you coming. Chica learned to play the long game. She watched how Ijeoma had slowly infiltrated the lives of her targets, always being the helpful, reliable woman, making herself indispensable in ways that seemed natural. At first it was about being quiet, offering to help with chores, running errands, and being there when the wives were busy or distracted. She learned to keep her emotions in check, never giving too much of herself, always holding a part of her back. But Chica's mind was sharp. She learned quickly. She knew that her appearance, her youth, her beauty, wasn't enough. She needed to be more than that. She had to find the perfect balance of being everything a man wanted in a woman while still keeping that distance. And for that she needed patience. She had learned how to wait, to watch, to let the man come to her. And that's what she did with Andrew. When she first entered the household, she didn't immediately show her hand. She didn't flirt, didn't try to gain his attention directly. Instead she blended in, quietly observing. She learned how Hanna ran the house, what she was busy with, when she was most distracted, when she seemed happiest, and when she seemed most vulnerable. Andrew, on the other hand, was much more easily read. She could tell from the first week that he was a man who craved attention but didn't want to feel suffocated. He wanted a woman who could make him feel like a man, but without demanding too much from him emotionally. Chica knew how to be just enough of what he needed to feel valued, but never so much that he would see her as desperate. With every passing day she gained his trust. She became the one he sought out for comfort, for a little extra help around the house. She would listen when he complained about his wife, offering sympathetic words, always careful to show that she understood, but never offering too much advice. It was a delicate dance, but Chica was skilled. She had learned that men like Andrew didn't fall in love at first sight. They needed to feel like they had made the decision themselves. So she let him decide. She let him choose her even though the entire time she knew she was the one in control. While Chica was weaving her web of deceit, the wives were caught in their own battles. Nadia, Victoria, and Hanna. Each woman was fighting her own personal war, none of them realizing that they shared a common enemy, the silent, unnoticed women who worked in their homes. Nadia had been married to Tawny for over 15 years. They had built a life together, and though the years had been challenging, she believed they had weathered the storm. But lately things had felt different. Tawny had become distant, and Nadia had been too preoccupied with her own work at the market to notice the slow changes. At first she noticed little things, Tawny spending more time at the office, the phone calls that were just a little too long. But she brushed them off. They were busy after all. But then one night after a long day at the market, she had come home early to find Tawny's phone on the kitchen counter. She picked it up absent-mindedly, intending to plug it in for him, when a message from their housekeeper, Grace, caught her eye. She tried to ignore it, but something about the message pulled her in. He read it. "You look beautiful tonight. I can't wait to see you again. I'm yours." Her heart dropped. He thought it was a mistake. Maybe she was reading too much into it. But the more she read, the more she realized it wasn't a mistake. That night, Nadia sat up, the weight of the discovery pressing on her chest. She didn't know what to do. She couldn't confront Tawny. Not yet. But she could feel the shift. The small, imperceptible changes that had been happening all along. She had been too busy with her own life to see it. As Nadia sat in silence, holding her husband's phone in her trembling hands, she couldn't help but wonder how many other women were dealing with the same thing. How many other wives had seen the subtle betrayals, the quiet signs that their marriages were not as safe as they thought. Victoria wasn't as quiet about her suspicions. She had noticed the change in Adam long before Nadia did with Tawny. Adam had always been a hard worker, but lately he seemed to be more absorbed in his business. His late nights at the office grew longer and the excuses came more often. But what hurt most was the way he looked at Lucy, their children's nanny. At first it seemed harmless. Adam was simply grateful for Lucy's help. But Victoria noticed the small telling signs. The way Lucy would laugh just a little too easily at his jokes. The way Adam's gaze lingered when she entered a room. Victoria tried to ignore it, but every day it became harder to deny. She confronted Adam one evening after another late night and asked him point blank, "Are you seeing Lucy?" Adam had denied it vehemently, of course. "You're imagining things, Victoria. Lucy's just doing her job. You need to trust me." But Victoria couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She had caught the way Lucy looked at Adam, the way she always seemed to be just a little too present, a little too eager to please him. Like Nadia, Victoria had no proof. She didn't have the evidence to confront him. But she could feel the distance, the growing separation, and it terrified her. As for Hanna, her suspicion of Chica's intentions grew every day. Chica was too good at her job, too perfect. There was always an excuse for why she needed to stay later, why she was always willing to help Andrew with things Hanna couldn't. But Hanna wasn't naive. She had seen the way Andrew started to look at Chica. The way he seemed to lean on her for everything. It wasn't just about the housework anymore. There was a growing closeness between them that felt too intimate, too dangerous. Hanna couldn't explain it, but she knew. Something wasn't right. The consequences of Chica's actions were becoming harder to ignore. She had played the game well, but as she drew closer to Andrew, she found herself in deeper than she had ever intended. Andrew had started to rely on her more. It wasn't just about helping with the house. It was about emotional support. Andrew had always been distant from Hanna, but now he turned to Chica. He vented his frustrations, shared his fears, and confided his dreams, things he never did with Hanna anymore. It was all too easy for Chica to slip into the role of the confidant. She knew exactly how to listen, how to make him feel heard, how to ease the burden he carried. She had learned to play the role of the perfect woman, understanding, patient, and always there when he needed her. But even she couldn't deny the growing tension between them. Andrew was becoming more and more drawn to her. He hadn't kissed her yet, hadn't crossed that line, but every look, every soft touch brought them closer. One night, after a particularly hard day at work, Andrew came home late. He found Chica in the kitchen preparing dinner as usual. She could see the exhaustion on his face, the way his shoulders slumped with the weight of the world. Without thinking, she walked up to him, her hand resting gently on his arm. "You're home late again," she said softly. "You must be tired." Andrew looked at her, his eyes weary but grateful. "I don't know what to do anymore," he said, his voice cracking with frustration. "Hanna and I haven't connected in so long. I don't know how to fix it." And in that moment Chica made her move. She didn't kiss him, didn't try to force anything. Instead she whispered the words he needed to hear. "You don't need to fix anything, Andrew," she said. "Sometimes we just need someone who understands. Someone who isn't afraid to listen." The distance between them closed just a little more. It was small, but it was enough. Enough to set Andrew on a path from which there was no easy return. Chica knew that once a man said those words, the battle was already won. He had him. Now all that was left was to finish what she had started. Hanna was no fool. Her instincts had sharpened over the years. First as a daughter in a home full of gossiping aunties, then as a wife in a city where secrets moved faster than the wind. The moment Andrew started using Chica's name too casually in conversations, she knew. When her children started repeating Chica's words at the dinner table instead of hers, the message was clear. She was losing her home from the inside. He tried to ignore it at first. She blamed herself. Maybe she had become too focused on her catering business. Maybe she had taken Andrew for granted. Maybe if she cooked his favorite egusi soup more often, or spent more time in the evenings with him, he wouldn't be so distant. But even as she tried, she could feel the walls closing in. That week, she noticed Andrew had started to lock his phone. He took private calls outside and deleted his WhatsApp chats. Chica, on the other hand, moved through the house like she owned it. Calm, quiet, helpful. Too helpful. Hanna started setting traps. One evening, she told Chica she'd be out of the house for a wedding. Then she doubled back quietly after 2 hours. She stood outside her own window and listened. She heard Chica's laughter, low, confident, and intimate. Andrew was laughing too. Hanna didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stood still like someone watching her own house burn, knowing the fire had been smoldering for months. She wasn't the only one. Nadia had begun following her husband, Tawny, after confronting him one night. He had told her she was crazy, jealous, paranoid. But Grace, the maid, had started buying expensive perfumes. Her nails were suddenly always polished. And she had upgraded her phone. Nadia, who had once pitied Grace's humble beginnings, now watched her with a deep, cold resentment. And Victoria? Victoria had done what many wives feared doing. She searched her husband's laptop. What she found there broke her. It wasn't pictures, it wasn't messages. It was a bank transfer, Nigerian naira 2 million. Sent to Lucy the nanny, labeled "For your business dreams." Her hands had trembled as she stared at the screen. That night Victoria didn't sleep. She just sat at the edge of her bed, wondering when her home became a battlefield. All 3 women were suffering quietly. They didn't know each other. They didn't know they were all victims of a quiet war led by a secret club of women who had made it their life's work to crawl into homes through the servant's door. But the storm was brewing. And soon everything would change. The club didn't have a name. It didn't need one. It lived through whispered advice, shared tactics, and unspoken rules passed down like ancient tradition. Most of the members had once been housemaids, nannies, or cooks. Many had once been victims, used, discarded, and ignored. The club gave them power. They met in informal places. Salons, local bars, women's hostels, and even church gatherings, because not every prayer warrior came to pray. In those spaces, new recruits were spotted, tested, and trained. The leader of the Lagos branch was known as Madame Tina. She was an older woman in her late 40s, with the calmness of a Sunday preacher and the cold precision of a knife. She had once been the housekeeper of a powerful senator's wife. Now she ran her own clothing business, but behind that accessories was a sharp mind and a dark network. She trained them in the 4 stages of conquest. Invisibility. You enter the house as a helper. You learn their weaknesses, observe their routine, and become non-threatening. Usefulness. You become essential. You solve problems. You're the extra pair of hands. You earn trust. Emotional bonding. You position yourself as a safe space for the man. Someone who listens without judgment. You let him talk. You become his peace. Ownership. By the time the man falls, you own him in ways the wife never could. You are the calm in his storm. And when the wife fights back, you play the victim. It wasn't just about stealing husbands. It was about survival, status, and revenge against a system that had denied these women choices. And Chica? She was rising fast in the ranks. She didn't just want Andrew's attention. She wanted his protection, his money, and eventually his home. But the wives weren't as blind as the club assumed. And this time the prey was starting to hunt back. It started with a conversation. Hanna couldn't take it anymore. She called her old university friend, Susan, a lawyer and well-connected society woman, and broke down on the phone. "She's after my husband," she whispered. "She's in my house. He's wearing my clothes. And I can't even prove it." Susan didn't laugh. She didn't judge. She simply replied, "You're not alone. Come to the Friday meeting." That Friday, Hanna walked into a room filled with women just like her. Doctors, market women, bankers, housewives. They were different in status, but they all shared the same scars: betrayal, heartbreak, and humiliation. And sitting across from her, also new, were Nadia and Victoria. They stared at each other, shocked. "You too?" Nadia whispered. Victoria nodded. "We've all been played." The wives' network wasn't official, but it was powerful. These were women with contacts, resources, and experience. Susan explained that the club had existed for years. "They're organized. But we can be more dangerous. Because we have more to lose." The women began to plan. Nadia hired a private investigator to follow Grace. What they found shocked everyone. Grace was sleeping not just with Tawny, but also with her former boss's husband. She had done this before. Victoria took her evidence to Adam's family. His mother, a fierce old matriarch who never approved of Lucy. In many cultures, especially among older women, the shame of scandal carries more weight than love. Lucy was dismissed that same week. No severance, no goodbye. As for Hanna, she staged a confrontation. She set a trap one Sunday evening. She told Andrew she'd be gone all night for a vigil. But she left her phone recording under the cushion in the living room. Then she left the door half-locked. That night she returned home and played the recording. Andrew's voice. Chica's voice. Flirting. Teasing. Promises. Then silence. It was enough. But Hanna didn't scream. She didn't destroy anything. Instead, she gathered the children, took them to her sister's house, and returned with 2 police officers and a lawyer the next morning. Andrew was stunned. He tried to lie. He begged. But Hanna was ready. And Chica? She was escorted out of the house like the thief she was. But as she stood at the gate, Chica turned around and smiled. "This is just the beginning," she said. Hanna didn't flinch. "Good," she replied. "Because now I know the rules." The wives were no longer crying. They were planning. What started as secret whispers in kitchens and salons became organized meetings in safe houses and halls. The wives' network was no longer just for venting. It was now a strategic task force. Susan, the lawyer, brought in a tech expert who taught them how to secure their phones, place discreet audio recorders, and protect their homes from digital snooping. Another wife, a former journalist, began compiling the wives' testimonies into a document titled, "Inside the Husband Snatchers Club, A Hidden War in Our Homes." Meanwhile, the club had gotten wind of what was happening. Madame Tina held a closed-door meeting in a salon that operated as a front. "These women think they can fight us?" she said, tapping her long red nails on the table. "Let them try. Every queen must fall for a new queen to rise." She ordered silence and deep cover. Some maids were advised to resign temporarily, some to twist the narrative, accuse the wives of abuse, claim emotional trauma, or simply disappear with household secrets. But the wives weren't backing down. Hanna had started a WhatsApp group called Sister Shield. They shared real-time photos, strange behaviors, contact numbers, and updates. When one wife suspected her nanny was acting strange, the others swooped in. Some even went undercover, pretending to be job seekers to test homes and maids alike. It became a full-blown war. Except it wasn't fought with guns. It was fought with silence, proof, influence, and strategy. Thank you for watching Geniusma African Tales. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think, give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more powerful tales, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every like, comment, and subscription helps us grow and keep African stories alive for the world to hear. Until next time, keep the stories burning and let your soul listen.